Happy Monday, Carl Cameron. I can't believe you were able to forge the time to be here with us today.
I'm already having tremendous fun.
Good. This is your opening music. It's a tune that I call It Never Gets Easier.
Yeah.
It never gets easier.
Every once in a while, it's nice to get lucky, and then you can feed off of that for a long time.
Yeah. Well, it certainly never gets easier in your line of work, and it was so great to spend some time with you yesterday. I mean, you're a famous journalist, campaign Carl, of course. But to me, you and your wife just feel like friends. I really feel like I've made new friends between you
It
and
is
Moira.
it is absolutely 100% mutual.
Oh, great.
Moira and I were sort of whispering last night during parts of the show, just thinking these guys are just amazing, fantastic.
Well, thank
Brian's
you.
Brian's a treat, and
Yes.
you're a double one.
Well, thank you for hosting the concert at your home. And I wrote a tune in my dream last night. See how I don't know if I can remember how it goes. It went kind of up like this. That's the whole thing. And it's great to have dreamed that last night at your home. You know.
It's just fantastic that you can have a dream and then make music the next day.
Well,
Uh,
every now and then I'm lucky and it happens.
I'm unlucky, I guess, because I just don't get those such dreams at all.
Well, you've been lucky in a lot of ways. Well, skilled is a large part of it. How did you become Campaign Carl? How did that happen?
Well, I started out in radio in New Hampshire, uh, the Granite State, live free or die, and also for about 105 years, the first state to have an election for president. So for 106 years, New Hampshire was always the first in the nation primary for presidential races. And that's being challenged quite aggressively this year. They're still going to get their in there first, but it may not be counted. And in New Hampshire, I started out as a radio reporter, and then went to the only TV station in the state that there was back in the 80s, so mid 80s, and started to work in television. And at that time, because of New Hampshire's importance, it was easy for this tiny little one very very small TV station to get really big pretty
Uh,
quickly when the elections came. And in 1995, I was I was the first of four reporters that Rupert Murdoch ordered up, because for the third he was going for his third try at a cable news channel, and I was able to, for the first, before Fox existed, before NBC existed, um, we had to get a fixture, and so we went around to all of the local TV stations, and what Murdoch said was, what you have to do now is get a news department, like it or not,
yeah.
and that's where the 10 o'clock news came from.
Oh, no
And
kidding. So that was
yeah,
the first 10 o'clock news.
yeah.
Wow.
And so that summer in 1995, I was driving around the country, flying around the country with Bill Clinton and Bob Dole, because that was the first election that I was doing for Fox. And at the end of my tour, when the election was over, and of course Clinton won, I expected to go back to New Hampshire because I loved New Hampshire and had a great life there, and I did. And I went on a long vacation because it was a long, 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 long trip. Every single presidential campaign is exhausting
Wow.
for the candidates as well as the reporters and the staffs. So my boss said, here's an envelope that they sent me from these Fox folks, and you've got a new deal, and you're going to work for Fox down in New York and in Washington. And I balked. I didn't want to do it. I was perfectly happy to go home.
Huh.
Partly because I already had been dealing with presidential candidates in New Hampshire before, and so I knew what to expect, and I was comfortable in New Hampshire. But I got talked into it from just about everybody, and stayed there for almost 20 years. Quit in 2016, immediately after the election. And so my wife had retired. She is also a journalist. She was my camera woman and a variety of other jobs while we were out on the road. And, we were out on the road sometimes 9, 10, 15 days. She'd get to go back, but I'd stay out. And it's a 2-year job to chase the presidential campaign.
Wow.
And a guy named Shepard Smith, who was one of the anchors at Fox, came up with the name of Campaign Carl. And it stuck. And I got doggies beneath me. My wife, Moira, my wife, has a dog rescue. So last night during the concert, we had to get all the dogs out of the house. They're back in the house now. So I'm not gonna force them to not bark.
Well, we'll talk
So
about
that's how
that
I got
too.
the name Carl Cameron, and that's how I got into journalism.
Yeah.
And what a gig! What a wonderful thing to do! I got to see the world, and I got to see how America votes and why and where and who and all that. And now I'm retired and happy about it, and I do a little bit of help here and there for various different shows and stuff like that. But for the most part, shows like yours and the type of music that you create and the type of environment and the aura that you have is a hell of a lot better than anything I ever did in front of a camera for politics.
Well, that's very genteel of you to say. Uh, well, later in the show, we are going to have a musical guest who's probably the most famous person I've ever had as my musical guest. I won't say who it is right now. But before we do, I wanted to know if you could give us a tour of DC. Well, you gave us, Brian and I, a tour, and I took some of the video that we did, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about it. And this is your car here that we rode in. I just think that's so cool. That's riding in
It's my wife's
style.
car. There
Ah,
she is.
yes.
Yeah, it's like the Batmobile or something like that.
Right,
It's
right.
an old car. It's about 14 years old.
Yeah. So, yeah, definitely riding in style. And here, we'll do a
It's an eye catcher.
little intro. We are here with Moira and Carl Cameron getting a personal tour of DC, complete with commentary.
And lots of bad ideas.
Well, I'll mute it, Carl, and let you give the commentary live here.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We're on 16th Avenue here, right?
16th Street, yep, which goes directly north from the White House into Maryland, which is where I live, where we live, and where you were last night. And it's right on the border of DC. And you can drive down to 16th Street, and eventually you have to stop because you're going to run right into the White House and the Secret Service.
A lot of churches that we passed
Lots
at
of churches.
16th.
It's basically 10 straight city blocks of virtually every denomination you can imagine.
Wow.
And it culminates with the yellow building right there. That is called the president. It's euphemistically called the President's Church. And that's where, whenever someone is a new president and has just been inaugurated, the next thing they do is they go across the green, which is right there. We're just driving now. We just drove right by the White House there, and it makes it possible for all of those presidents to have gone into that particular church, and good luck for America.
Yes. Yeah, we passed a Carnegie building there too.
Yeah, and so right now we're going down to that right there. That is the road that takes you to our left, right up to Capitol Hill, and you're looking at the Department of Justice right there.
It's a big
And
building.
that building right there is the African American Museum, which is an absolutely fantastic place. And on the third floor of that monster of a building, it's all about music and absolutely
Oh,
spectacular.
I'll have to go
Going
there
back to its ages. Oh, there's the car
when I come
again.
back.
Oh yeah, you
Yeah.
know why? Because we're leaving the White. We were just at the White House and we just parked the car and now we're moving out.
Yep. So we'll go for a walk from here. Yeah. Back up.
DC in daylight is an absolutely beautiful place. There are portions of the community, however, that are almost always in darkness, and that's a euphemism in the sense that there's a lot of violence and a lot of problems in New York and DC as well.
Ah,
And it's a federal city, but it's organized and run by a mayor, just like any other big city would, and they are unfortunately forced to do pretty much whatever the Congress and the Senate say,
yes.
and it's difficult. Here are the folks outside. There's all kinds of, and there's us. There's Brian,
Yep.
and so people come from all over the world, and you'll hear people speaking in all kinds of languages. There's some fantastic things like this one right here, wanted, wisdom and honesty. And this is literally facing the president and the White House and his home. For
Yes.
any president who's been there, these particular two tents have been there probably for the last 15 years.
Really.
Um,
I
and
thought it was so interesting that there are people with their causes right there in front of the White House.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And whenever there's a big event of anything of political value, there will be people standing in front of the White House barking at the moon, even if the president isn't even in the building at the time, because they know that you gotta fight hard if you want to get something done. And that's the Jefferson Memorial, one of my favorites. If the president wakes up in the morning, he looks out across the George Washington Monument, but as he looks past the Washington Monument, he'll have to listen to, or at least think about, there it is, Thomas Jefferson. And so he literally sees, so whether it was Donald Trump or whether, as it is now, Joe Biden, they are forced to think about what Jefferson was about. And he was very, very controversial, still is. It's worth remembering that just about all of the people who were part of the foundation of this country had something to do with slavery. And that's a problem, but there it is. And now you'll see the picture where we was talking about a minute ago, where the president, if you look through the building, if we do get the two shot back the other way, there, boom, look across, that's his house, and this monument was specifically placed there because Jefferson is considered probably the smartest of all of the first men.
I was so impressed by these sayings on the wall. The eloquence and depth of those sayings.
Now we're here we're at the Roosevelt era. This is his monument, and there's Brian now. This is at the Depression. One of the things that this is, there we go. There's Eleanor. Most people don't know this, but she's the person who started. Whoops, we lost her already.
I'll pause here.
But she was the one who started the UN,
Really?
United Nations. Yep.
Ah, that is something. Oh, let me go back to Eleanor here. Hang on. Yes.
There she is.
And that was another thing that I was really impressed with was how much she actually did. She not only, created the United Nations, but essentially ran the country, as you said, when Theodore Roosevelt was too ill to do a lot of that work.
That's right. He was incapacitated numerous times, and it was very well hidden. And he was rolling around in a wheelchair, but you never saw him other than from the waist up.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then another thing that I didn't know about as we were going is that there was another founding father here.
Yeah, this poor guy got cut out. He had some great ideas, but it was one of the early players, and there he is. Didn't get any recognition, but ultimately there is a little small monument to him too. But at when he was part of the founding fathers, he was pretty much ostracized.
So that was
So
Mason.
he's been resurrected. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I was really impressed at how much of these things I didn't know.
Well, and he was the guy really who was the one who wrote a lot of the information that was both the Declaration of Independence and the beginnings of the Constitution. So he really got screwed.
In our history books, yes. Um, and I've always been a big fan of Martin Luther King Jr. And
Yeah.
but I had never read some of the sayings that were on the wall, and I just know of him, for his civil rights work. But he also was very interested in international events. And
Oh yeah,
yeah.
he was all over Europe, trying to explain how terrible things were in the U.S. and found that there were an awful lot of people of color in Europe who didn't have that sense of degradation and racism, and so that part of his going there was a big illumination for him, and it kind of jacked up his prominence as a consequence.
Yes. And so I'll go on that. And it was an
There he is.
interesting memorial there. It's, yeah, there they
Yeah,
are.
actually, the people who made that, the folks who did it, were from Japan, and
Mhm.
when it was put up initially, it was considered very controversial because it looked kind of like communist type imagery because it's so sort of strong uh, but it's been there now for 20 years, and it is right next to the Roosevelt Memorial for a reason. Um, these were two of the most important people in the country in their times.
And this monument is huge too.
Yes,
Yeah, that little dot down there at the bottom was me standing next to it.
three or
I,
four.
I, I realize I'm small, but
Yeah, it has to be at least three or four houses up,
yeah,
60, 70 feet.
yes.
All of
Well,
these
here,
things are all free to see if you come to DC, folks.
yes. So we'll get back in the car, and I
Cars
should
getting
add.
lots of attention.
Yeah, that's right. uh, well, I'll go and there's a bunch of people saying hello and giving some thoughts, and Raphael says 3 of the greatest men in the world were Eleanor Roosevelt.
Fabulous.
Isn't that
Yep.
great? Yeah. So yeah, it's a great saying.
She really did run the show a lot, and when you found the United Nations, you have done something that literally lasts perhaps as long as our little blue planet stays.
Yes, and some of our members here used to visit yearly to DC. So,
Mhm.
uh, so before we go to our guests, let me just greetings. Yeah, greetings from Jay and Bob and Joyce. So from all over, we got from Maine coming in and Florida, Nashville, and let's. Let's say a little bit about what Moira is doing, because I think that we know of you and Moira for your work, but you both have so many other interesting sides to you.
Well,
Yes.
she when she retired, she went right back to work and didn't even know it was going to be work when it started. Um, she left the business before I did, and she got bored, and so she got a dog. I happen to have really really bad allergies, and I've taken shots of me all over the place. It doesn't stop it. So we had a dog, and his name is Toby, and we got him from Puerto Rico as a rescue dog. He was found in a dumpster, and that alone is pretty gross.
Uh-huh.
But he was also almost completely smeared with bugs, and it took a while for down in Puerto Rico for them to get him even travel worthy. But ultimately, he came up here, and that was the beginning of having an idea of how bad things are in the tropics, and really at a horrible amount of the rest of the world, is that dogs aren't treated well, pets aren't treated well, and particularly in the tropics, it's too easy for them to live on the beach and eat bad human food that's coming from people who are taking their vacations, or perhaps up in the jungle or whatever, but they're living outside. And sometimes they live in the streets and sometimes they live elsewhere, but they don't have good health care, they don't have good food, their lives get messed up. And the real knock is that almost all of them, at some point or another, were somebody's dog. They all kind of look the same in a lot of ways, but so they got to get off the island in large measure because it's dangerous. They can get dirty. It's a pain in the neck and sometimes tough on places where there's a lot of merchant work going on and the dogs are running around. It scares people. So Moira, and there are numbers of people who do this. Moira decided she wanted to start a rescue and see if we could actually get more dogs to come up here and get them housed with good families here in the DC area. And that was 3.5 years ago. And I guess it's now about 400 dogs. Is that right, Mo?
Over 3.
She's saying over 3, but she thinks that I'm packing the numbers, and now I know she's definitely downing it. So we'll split the difference. And they all come up either in a plane, under a seat from what we call flight angels, whether they are actually an attendant or just somebody who's on a vacation and lives in the area and would be willing to do it. So that takes a little bit of Facebook and a little bit of work on the internet, but that's about it. And then there's the cargo flights, and that way you can get 5 or 6 dogs in there. But we don't try to look for a lot. We try to look for really good dogs that are in really good shape and need to get off the island, because if it's more than a year or 2 old, it's almost too late to even be able to save them, because it's tough. There's a lot of them.
If somebody wants to either adopt one of these dogs, or if they happen to be traveling and can transport them, how do they get in touch with
that's
Toby's
easy.
Rescue?
It's tobysrescue.com.
Okay.
The boss is Moira Hopkins. I am but a grunt in this business. And the irony is, I'm a guy who's got all these allergies to dogs and stuff like that, and you know what? He gives me a good deep voice, and so that's pretty good when you got to work with your mouth and talk too.
That's right. And before we go on to our special guest, can you just tell briefly about who is joining me? This is from last night's house concert. We have a wonderful folk singer and guitar player who I really, really enjoyed playing and singing with, I have to say. It was just a delight.
It was a delight.
Yes.
We do house concerts a couple of times a year usually, and this guy's just a friend of ours. He lives in the neighborhood, and he is really kind of unique in all things science and politics. His name is Francis Collins, and way back when, he was the first person to define and finish the human genome. So we really know all about how humans can live and get better or not because of Francis Collins. Fast forward a few years, and he was running the National Institute of Health, that's NIH, which meant that he's basically the boss of Mr. Fauci. And Francis is a Harley driving musician with piano and guitar and others. He is an amazing guy, and by mapping the genome, he's opened up ways for millions of people across the planet. And he happens to be really funny, really a great pal. And whenever we have a house concert, we have to let him come.
Oh. Well, he was
It's a
just
terrible,
just a
it's a
delight.
terrible, terrible thing to bear, to have something like that, to have him come into the house and do all that, you know.
Well, here he is doing a tune in your living room. This is Hard Times.
Let us pause in life's pleasure and count its many tears, while we all sorrow with the fool. Here's a song that will linger forever in our ears. Oh, hard times come again. Here's a song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again. Oh, many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again. There's a song that is lifted across the troubled wave. There's a cry that is heard along the shore. There's a dirge that is murmured around the lonely grave. Oh, hard times come again, oh Lord. There's a song, the sigh of the weary. Hard times come again, no. Many days you have lingered around my cabin door. Oh, hard times come again, no. That's so sweet.
I tell you, it was so much fun just to play with him, just as a musician, you know. And I love this song too.
Long before you got to the house yesterday to get started, Moira had called Francis and said, "Hey, if you're coming, why don't you bring a guitar?" And so that's how he got roped into this, just because she thought it would be a good idea. And of course, he's humble enough to be a little embarrassed, and yet he also knows who you are, and he also knows, you know, he is a serious musician. He plays a lot around the town. So it was great fun. He's got a couple of bands that he plays with when we get around the city.
Though their voices are silent, their pleading will still say, oh, hard times come again, oh.
It's kind of hard to see, but on the neck of his guitar is a series of sort of squishy things that look like snakes. That's supposed to be the double helix, which is, of course, the whole business of genetics.
Around my cabin door, oh, hard times come again, no more. Oh, hard times come again, no more. Yeah.
I can't wait to hear Francis when he finds out that this has been out here, and to see how he handles it. That's going to be great.
Oh, it was just a delight, and you know, just a delightful person. He's got light in his person, and he's a good listener. As I was playing, he was listening to what I was doing and following. So I mean, that indicates he's a good listener in general. You know, I think
Absolutely.
that's yeah, and you know, people who poo-poo music. Music is just part of
Spiritual.
yes, part of the spirit. It's a way of expressing the spirit.
Amen.
Yes. Well,
I've been looking at all of these, some of the folks that have been on the comments here,
yes.
and it's just fantastic. I'm really impressed. I don't usually do this kind of thing, but I'm seriously thinking that I've been really dumb not to be doing it.
Well, I'm very honored that you've turned down major opportunities on the air, and here you are doing my Monday Live.
Yeah, well, I mean, what our dear pal here is basically saying is that, yeah, Carl got kind of fed up with a lot of the TV stuff, and I sometimes I do at CNN and MSNBC, but not very often anymore. We need to have we need to have a little bit of a pause from all this stuff once in a while, and I'm taking one.
Oh, well, good for you. What are some of the funniest things that have happened while you were covering the presidency that you can talk about on the air, or any of the presidencies that you have covered?
Well, I mean, it comes down to what's a good scoop when you're doing that kind of thing, and what I was taught was get it right before getting it first, because if you get it first and you're wrong, you're screwed. And so I was always doing sort of long trips around the country, meeting and writing and reading and commenting on politicians. So George W. Bush, 4 days before the election that he won ultimately against Al Gore, was real pissed off at me at the last few days of the election, because I was the guy who broke the story that he had had a DWI in Maine, and had been asked in the past if he'd ever had anything like that, and always had said no. And I told him I was going to put it on the air, and I had the proof, and the staff knew that, and they said, "Okay, we'll call you back." And that went on for several hours during the course of the day. And exactly 5 minutes before 6 o'clock, they gave me a 4-sentence assertion of, "Yep, you're right, that happened." And then it went public all around the country, and that was an amazing thing for me to have happen. But what is more memorable is I was already set up to have an interview with George Bush the following day, which was Saturday, 4 days before the actual election was over. And what ended up happening was I said, "Okay, you're telling me you're not going to give me the interview that we'd already booked weeks ago? I'm happy to go on the air all day long and say that you, the governor of Texas, who wants to be president, doesn't have the guts to own up to what happened yesterday, because we already had a booked report, interview." And the staff told the president that, and he came, and he came up to me that morning, and he said, with a big grin on his face, "That's a good piece of work, Camarones," which was the nickname that he gave me, which, if you don't know, means shrimp in Spanish. So, and we were friends the whole way. I mean, somebody was going to find out, and I was just the guy who happened to do it. And those types of things would happen a lot. And it's not anything of journalism should not be about gotcha stuff, but unfortunately, good news is boring. Bad news gets money on your table. And
it's that way we have so much bad news.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, there's an awful lot of crime and violence and stuff like that, but a lot of the lesser evils, they're there too. And everybody in politics is a person, and
right.
People, we're kind of weird. We're not all that reliable sometimes, and it's okay to acknowledge that. And most politicians don't.
Yeah. Well, Let's play another cut that we did last night. See if I get this. We had a request for The Water is Wide, and so just coincidentally, we played that one. Everyone out there sing along with this. Okay, everyone who's watching, sing along again. Last chance. Wow.
And
That's
you guys rehearsed maybe 20 minutes. I mean, for you,
right.
for you. You don't need to have rehearsal. But I mean, you know, to just jump in for the two of you like that and have it work out so well, it's just fabulous.
We just looked, found three tunes that we knew, and I ran past a few of them. In fact, here's a little bit of the rehearsal, and you can see the helix that's in his guitar. Um, let's see if I can pull this up. Uh, it's a. So tell us about the helix before we look at this.
Well, it's the way in which the genes all run up and down that long pole of genes, and there's thousands and thousands, if not millions, of pieces of tiny materials that have to be understood. And it was for years and years and years, people knew about genes, but they didn't know how to get it all the way through the human genome. There were all kinds of animal tests for years and years and years to get this way. And sideline, the animal protection people and folks that worry about euthanasia of animals come and bug him at his house a lot, because that's part of science. But it's in the everybody's body everywhere. And what they did was, I think it was a 6-year project with scientists from all over the world. That Francis was the head of the American one, and France was the sort of best opponent, and lost by a matter of a couple of days.
Wow! So they were, with all the time they were working, he was able to discover it just within days ahead of the French.
Years and years and years of work, but the people who were right behind him, the French, was like 3 or 4 days right behind him.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it was billions of dollars of science money was spent all over the world at the time.
And it's just such an important part of medical science now.
The American lifetime now has gotten up to over 75. That's pretty good, and there's a huge number of people who are well into their 80s, and there's no other country except a very, very few that we have the ability to do that because of the medicine and because of the availability of the medicines.
Yes. Well, you can see it if you look really carefully during this rehearsal. It's a better
There it is.
view.
Yeah. And they twist around each other.
This is during your party when we were rehearsing.
Playing next to a ping pong table. Classic.
That's right.
That's sweet.
Yeah. I think I enjoy the rehearsal as much or more than the performance, and just felt like he's somebody I could play with in a band. I think our voices blend.
I guarantee he'll be there. You just name the time.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it'd be very interesting band. There was another band that was quite interesting that played during my breaks. I did a concert for the astronauts in Houston. And during the breaks, there was a band that was all made up of astronauts that got up and played. And some very famous astronauts. And that was the show where Susan Helms bought my Heartstrings recording that went up to space.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
So it was
Intergalactical.
Yes. Yeah, maybe I'll play that to finish off the show. But any other? I'm looking to see if there's any other comments to respond to. We have a lot of thank yous. Gail says thank you for the tour of D.C. that she just got to see with us now. And
it was a wonderful couple of days, and I tell you what, I was getting more and more and more anxious as the hours clicked, and so when you got here, and it was just instantaneously, oh, this is going to be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, not just the show, but I mean, just hanging out with you guys.
Yeah, Well, you have an open invitation here. By the way, we just arrived here. This is what we fondly call the shack for good reason. Brian's grandparents' 1909 summer shack, where we're spending the summer. We just pulled into the driveway just in time to set up the microphone and the computer and go on live with you. So after driving from your house. And so it's great here. Oh, Brian, Captain Brian?
Yes.
We have a note here from Bunny who says, "Where's Captain Brian?" Okay, come over here and say hello.
I am here, Bunny. Hey, Carl.
Hey, Brian.
Yes,
So-
the shack. We've got a lot of cleaning to do. It's the animals and crickets and spiders have had full rain all winter, so
Oh, boy.
sweep it out.
Yeah, we're going to reclaim the space from them. And you'll be on dinner duty today.
I'm already on dinner duty.
Yes. So,
Well, you
Well, Her
I
Majesty
absolutely
works.
loved the visuals that you guys have put together. It was, I told you both that I was a little skeptical, wasn't quite sure because we were just looking for music, and boy was I wrong. It's terrific, and your work is just great there, buddy.
yeah, I know everyone enjoyed the visuals. So, yeah.
Thank you, Carl.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I better go back in the kitchen and put my chef hat on.
Well, Carl, is there anything else you'd like to say? I'll
Well,
give some greetings before we-
I think you've made me required to come and do this more often with you.
Oh, great.
This is a wonderful way for you to keep in touch with your fans, but it's also just fabulous to be able to just see you talk and hang out, and I take a look at that monster of a piece of machinery and music, and it just boggles my mind, and the way in which you can make music from it is really impressive.
Oh,
And I do
thank
a
you.
lot of these things, and I've never seen anybody who is so addicted. I've seen plenty of harp guitar stuff, but apart from just one or two or three others, I think you're so passionate about it, it makes it even much more fun.
Well, thank you. I started doing these Monday Lives as much to reconnect with my musician friends as anything else when we couldn't get together for real. So it was an excuse to, call my friends and say, hey, let's hang out virtually at some point. Okay, here's a view from space to finish off today. And thank you again, Carl, for just the great time that we had and for joining me here on Monday Live.
Thank you so much. It is a pleasure, it is an honor and a treat. And thanks for everybody who takes part in this and helps out with it, because helping each other out is really important.
Oh, absolutely. The instrument is reacclimating to the temperature and the humidity here at the beach.
Yeah, I
house.
bet.
Yeah. Here it is, a view from space. Oh, thank you. Well, thanks
Fabulous.
again for joining me, and hope to see you again very soon. So, and we'll see you all next Monday. All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
So long. Thank
This
you.
has been
Thank
great.
You. Thank you, Carter.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye now.